Hello, the topic of my presentation is Certified Translation and Interpreting in Poland, Ethical Challenges for Professionals. And I am giving this speech on behalf of my esteemed colleagues, Professor Artur Dariusz-Kubacki and Professor Marek Kuźniak, and myself. And my name is Joanna Boźniczak. When considering professional ethics in the context of the profession of sworn translator, first, it needs to be specified what it means. Hence, to mention the sources of professional ethics for translators and interpreters in Poland, we need to look at two documents. The first of them is the Act of the 25th of November 2004 on the profession of sworn translator. It is a significant normative act. As at the point of adoption, it was a milestone towards the regulation of the profession. It contains, among other things, the wording of the oath that persons sworn as translators need to take. The second document is the Professional Sworn Translators Code, and it is important, even though it is not legally binding. It is a sort of code of conduct, and it is highly respected amongst translators, but not only, as the product of collaboration of practicing translators, theoreticians, and also the representatives of the Ministry of Justice. And it mentions the following principles of professional ethics: dignity, fidelity, impartiality, confidentiality, and solidarity. To briefly define these concepts, dignity as a position adopted by classical liberals is defined by the so-called harm principle. And the Victorian philosopher John Stuart Mill, in his On Liberty, stipulates that individuals should be permitted to act in any way that does not bring harm to others. Fidelity, in turn, is the principle concerned with building trusting relationships at all levels of human interaction, including the relation translator-text. And sub-principles of fidelity include the responsibility to keep a commitment and accountability. Confidentiality means that individuals shall protect the confidentiality and security of records of professional services provided, research and scholarly activities conducted, and products dispensed, and also the confidentiality of any personal information about persons served professionally or participants involved in research and scholarly activities. And access to these records shall only be allowed when doing so is necessary to protect the welfare of a person or of a community, when it is legally authorized or otherwise required by law. And solidarity. It becomes manifest in a particular social system, in a particular time and place. It is a social phenomenon. Solidarity turns out to be a community of working people who strive together to free human work from burdens and sufferings which are caused by another man. Individuals shall uphold the dignity and autonomy of the professions, maintain collaborative and harmonious interprofessional and intraprofessional relationships, and accept the profession's self-imposed standards. One could wonder then if professional ethics can be evaluated in any way. There is a body in Poland, and it is called Commission for Professional Accountability of Sworn Translators, and sworn translators in Poland may be punished by it. The commission was set up under the Act on the Profession of Sworn Translator. The commission's role is to take decisions as to professional accountability of sworn translators who either do not perform their tasks or duties resulting from the above act, or who perform these tasks or duties improperly or in an unreliable manner. The penalties that the commission may impose on a translator include an admonition, a reprimand, a financial penalty, a suspension of the right to practice the profession for a period from 3 months up to 1 year, and also the deprivation of the right to practice the profession, with the possibility of returning to the profession, but only after passing the initial qualification examination, which can be taken not earlier than 2 years from the deprivation. And To give you the types of infringements that are considered by the Commission, let us take a look at the following types. First includes formal infringements, such as, for instance, the refusal to translate during the proceedings that are conducted under a legislative act or at the request of a law enforcement authority. The second type is criminal infringements, such as providing translation offices by sworn translators with blank sheets of paper, only with the translator's seal and signature. And that allows translation offices to use such prepared sheets in any way that they like, basically. The third type of infringements includes translation errors. And this means conveying in the target text a different item of information than the one that is contained in the source text, or omitting in the target text the information present in the source text, or making mechanical errors, usually connected with copying numbers incorrectly or copying some other personal details, which might later on be problematic for a customer having such a faulty translation. To give you the examples of non-ethical behavior, as they have been considered by the Commission, let us look into the following. Sworn translators are punished for infringing the impartiality rule. This is the value that lies at the heart of the profession. And it is also a source of trust in the translations that the sworn translator does, as the recipients must be convinced that the translation has been prepared impartially. Impartially, it means that nothing has been added to it, or nothing has been omitted from it, or nothing has been twisted in it, either to the advantage or disadvantage of the client. And mind you, these are the core values which are emphasized in the sworn translator's professional code of conduct. And due to the failure to observe the above rule, a sworn translator of Hebrew, well, got a penalty. He transliterated from the Hebrew alphabet into the Roman alphabet an identical form of the surname that appeared twice in the same vital record, but he did that in two different ways. Such a solution was advantageous to the client, and the translator adopted it on the basis of the client's explanations without referring to the appropriate documentation that would justify the change. And although the rules for transliteration from Hebrew allow for the use of different letters, the liberty of doing this in the above case was malpractice because the translator did not have enough data to make the change. Another example of interpretation of the translation is the broadening of the translation of the medical name disposable medical brush, and it was translated into Polish as disposable medical cytological brush, even though the word cytological does not appear in the original document. It was done at the customer's request, and as a result of that, the product was registered in Poland. Another example includes distorting the contents, for instance, over or under translating or interpreting of the text in the translation following customer's persuasion, for instance, selective translation of the source text. Another instance includes falsifying documents by a sworn translator. In one of the cases examined by the Commission, a translator changed the content of the original document in such a way that he changed the content of an authentic court letter by inserting a different date than appeared in the source document. Another example includes certifying untruth by sworn translators, consisting in preparing certified translations based on a xerocopy or a scan, but stating in the certifying clause that the translation had been prepared based on an original document. Another example includes the refusal to do the translation in an exceptional case, such as, for instance, an accident involving a foreigner. Another example of non-ethical behavior was preparing certified translations from a language a translator, well, knows, but is not qualified to prepare translations from that language. For instance, if a translator knew, let's say, German and Dutch, but was officially qualified to prepare translations from German only, then he was not entitled to prepare translations from Dutch. And finally, the failure to collect letters or pick up telephone calls from courts with requests to undertake translations or interpreting assignments, even though a translator has the time and the expertise that are necessary to complete the assignment. The authors themselves have had certain ethical dilemmas in their own translation practice, and these include, for instance, clients, the fact that clients would insist that translators are to interpret in their favor, for example, during court hearings, so that they appeared in a more favorable light before the judge, or when interpreting during official exams, for instance, driving or some other exams to operate some other vehicle or device, the translators feel compelled to make small talks with examiners or are expected even to aid examinees. And finally, the final example, in line with the Sworn Translators Code of Practice, sworn translators have the right to chat with a foreigner before a court hearing to make sure they understand them, their speaking pace. However, sometimes when they do that, their impartiality is questioned, and the fact that they did chat is brought up in the courtroom. Professional ethics is an issue that can be viewed subjectively sometimes, even though there exist, let's say, objective criteria to assess someone's unethical behavior. That is why the authors have created a short survey and asked some sworn translators about how they perceive professional ethics in the context of interpreting assignments in courts. Court setting is specific. It is highly formal. It is a place where various registers clash. For instance, very highly formal utterances of the judge and very, let's just say, utterances in very low register of the witnesses or the victims, the injured parties. It is needless to say that ethical conduct is of vital importance there. As you can see, the respondents of this survey were sworn translators of various languages, mostly English, but there were also the translators of German, Dutch, and Korean. The number of respondents was 12. And the survey encompassed 7 closed questions and 1 open question. And apart from the questions that elucidated statistical data such as age, gender, working language, and frequency of court assignments, the survey also contained some questions that pertained specifically to professional ethics. And these questions are as follows. Which ethical values are, in your opinion, important when working in a court? And that was a multiple choice question. The next question was a yes/no question about having experienced ethically challenging situations when working in a court. And the follow-up question to that one was about, well, some specific information, some feedback. And the last question was, can you specify what may have an impact on translators' ethical or unethical behavior when working in a court? And let us take a look at the obtained results. Well, it is clear that the 2 values, impartiality and confidentiality, received the highest score. They received 12 answers or points. What ranked second was, as you can see, reliability and diligence. What was third was honesty and also resistance to pressure, as well as professionalism. What is surprising to see was that professional solidarity received the lowest score, and one might wonder whether this particular value is not important to the interviewed translators. Having been asked about the experience of ethically challenging situations, 75% of respondents claimed that they did not experience such situations, and only 25% of the respondents said that they did have such situations when working in a court. And the provided feedback is as follows. One translator stated he was urged by the judge to interpret faster. This is surprising, really, given the fact that court interpreting is, is a complex process. Usually the pace of speech is quite, fast. There is also very specialist terminology. The dynamics of in a courtroom is also very high. So this maybe proves that the judge has very little understanding of the specificity of interpreting as a process. Another translator reported it was unclear for him how to interpret vulgarisms in the light of undecided attitude of the judge. And that is yet another issue that is not quite clearly specified. And a lot of translators are simply, unsure how to act, how to proceed in the case if there appears a vulgarism. Yet another translator reported she had a conflict when interpreting in the court for a customer, even though she had translated documents for that person before and had done private interpreting assignments. Another translator stated she had been excluded from the court trial at the request of one party on the grounds of the alleged lack of impartiality. Another translator said that during pre-court interrogation at which she was present regarding battery as a result of racial prejudice, the interrogating officer was wearing a T-shirt with a racist logo, and the person that represented the victim expected the translator to side with them, but the translator preferred to stay neutral. Another translator said that she spoke during a hearing after her translation was questioned by one of the attorneys present. She stuck to her translation, but she was not sure if her reaction was in accordance with the so-called court etiquette. Let us take a look at the results of the last question about the factors that might impact translators' ethical or unethical behavior when working in a court. And there are two highest results. No, there is one value that received the highest score, and that is lack of impartiality of the translator. And the second is small or no translation experience. What came third is the pressure from other participants of the proceedings. What received the lowest score is translators' unfamiliarity with legal regulations. Therefore, in the opinion of the respondents, this does not really have an impact on the translator's behavior. Okay, to conclude, one might say that even though professional ethics is a value that is quite well defined in legal and professional documents that pertain to translators, and given the fact that translators are sensitive to behaving in an ethical way and are able to identify ethical qualities, mind you, impartiality and confidentiality were the values that received the highest score. There are nevertheless instances of unethical behavior of translators, and that is confirmed by the cases that are brought before the Commission of Professional Accountability. These are the results of both translation errors and also deliberate actions. Yet it must be said that not infrequently translators are prevailed upon by customers who request that translations be made the way customers need it. Thank you.